Hey y'all, my name is Luke. I make bags from high performance materials that would otherwise be discarded, but today I'm back with another video update. This one kind of showing y'all what I've been up to during the summer, starting off with some shots of what the boat barn looks like in the summertime. So I did go and pick up our new engine, and the first thing they brought out was this old seized up Westerbeek, and it didn't look quite right. So thankfully I got that sorted out, and they brought out the new Yanmar 3YM30AE. So it's the same amount of horsepower that was in the boat before. It's just a newer, more efficient engine, and I think we'll be really happy with this. It's a really reliable setup. Yanmar makes great marine diesels, and like I said in the video last time explaining why we're not going with the Ocean Volt electric propulsion system, this cost about a sixth as much as the whole Ocean Volt system. It weighs less than just the generator would have been for that, and it takes up less space, and it'll fit. So like I said before, it is the same size as what was in there before. It's just newer and more efficient and real shiny. So here I'm just dropping it into the engine compartment to make sure everything fits right. And it is a tiny bit bigger, so I am going to have to make a couple of modifications to the interior of the engine compartment just to make sure that the alternator is going to fit. Another project I've been working on is replacing all the through holes through the deck with compressed carbon fiber cookies. So basically anywhere where there's hardware or a bolt going through the top sides, I want to have either this solid carbon fiber cookie that I've been making a bunch of, or wren-shaped plugs. So that way, when there is a bolt going through there or a piece of hardware, even if water does get through there, it's not gonna make the balsa core wet, and it'll just make sure that there's absolutely no compression happening under heavy loads. So yeah, here I'm adding some thickened vinyl ester in there, and I cut it out with a hole saw and then made these plugs and just hammering them in there, and then they'll get fiberglassed over, and eventually holes will get drilled through them where the new bolts and hardware will go on the deck. My neighbor Tom, who's been really helpful this whole time, really I couldn't do this project without Tom and Chris, and we'll meet them eventually. I keep meaning to go over there and make a video showing their shops. But he had this old rudder stock that was just sitting in the yard and just waiting for me to come by and pick it up, I guess. But I'm just cutting off the old rudder that was attached to it here in preparation to make a new rudder for the boat using a mold that Tom also has. So he did measure the old rudder that I cut off, and it's about the same surface area as a Cascade 36 rudder. So at this point, that's what we're planning on making a new one of. I'm thinking probably with carbon fiber, just to keep everything as light as possible in the stern there. And yeah, like I said, here I am just taking apart this old one. There was some wetness in there, and it's pour foam. So basically you just make two shells, glass them together, and then pour in this foam to take up all the airspace. So that's what a rudder stock looks like. It's a stainless tube, and it kind of flattens out towards the bottom, and there are these pieces of metal that go through it to make sure that it stays on. Also, we want to add a self-tacking jib track, so I'm closing off where the windows, or portholes, whatever you want to call them, used to be here in the front, so that the self-tacking jib track will go basically in front of the mast, and these windows were a little too far back, so they're kind of in the way of where the self-tacking jib track is going to go, so we're going to reposition those windows once we get everything positioned right. Another project that's been big on the list is figuring out the bow. So we want to add a bowsprit, and yeah, it's a project that Chris is helping out big time with. He's got some 3D renderings of the bowsprit that we're going to build, and we'll show that next time. It's super exciting. It's going to be about a 36-inch bowsprit that'll allow us to do an asymmetrical spinnaker and code 0 and all that kind of good stuff. Now I'm adding some rough cut holes for some cockpit pockets back here, so it's really handy to have some storage for stuff in the cockpit. And I will eventually add partitions, and there'll also be little holes for ventilation inside these things, for air intake for the engine, air exhaust for the engine. So all that stuff is not taking up space on the deck or on the coamings. It'll be kind of hidden in there, but still with good airflow. And it took me a minute to figure out the best way to do this. I tried with the router template. Didn't really, I mean, it's all my fault obviously, but it didn't work out quite as well as I wanted. So eventually I just used some featherite to put in some pieces of Divinycell foam, and then I used a big hole saw to do either end to make sure that that was a perfect round hole, and just a multi-oscillator tool to connect the two holes to each other to make the close to perfect, I guess, as close as I can get, holes for the cockpit pockets here. So I have been using some carbon fiber and woven matting, fiberglass, to glass over that foam, and we'll get that next time. And as usual, there's been a lot of carbon fiber tabbing together panels that I added on, as well as just sanding. Sanding is kind of never ending, and that's just how it goes. So here's just a shot of what the interior of the bathroom looks like now. And I've also been cutting out these partitions that they had on the boat originally. So at the top of the screen there where you see that blue paint is where they had a glassed-in water tank. It's pretty grody, but we want to get some new tanks built, one for water on the port side and one for diesel fuel on the starboard side. So just gotta make them as big as possible since we're gonna be cruising on this boat and living aboard it. We want the diesel and water tanks to be as big as possible, so I'm just cutting out those partitions, oops, to make enough room for that. And also just filling in as many holes as possible because we're going to be putting in a new engine control panel, probably in a different spot. So just trying to get the cockpit here ready for adding bulkheads, the rudder posts, the steering quadrants, all that kind of stuff. Another big project has been starting the fairing process. So I did sand the top sides all the way down to the glass, and maybe I should have just stopped when I hit the fairing compound, but I wanted to see what was underneath it, so I just went ahead and sanded all the way down, and now I am using some featherite, some Bondo, to fill in all the little valleys and troughs as the first step of fairing out the decks. So this will get sanded down until it's kind of smooth, and then we'll start adding 2 layers of carbon fiber and then 2 layers of chopped strand mat on top of that, and then the final fairing will be just sanding out that chopped strand mat to get some paint over that. And still a ways away, but the fairing process on the top side has started. So lots of prep work to do to get ready for adding a new anchor locker door, a little partition in there, or just a bucket for the chain to drop into. And yeah, it's exciting stuff. Here's what it looks like when I'm using the drill press and a hole saw to cut out the wren-shaped plugs that are going to go into the deck. And I'm also starting to get ready to tab in whole new panels on the transom, because pretty major modifications going on back there from what it was originally. So here you can see all the little holes that I drilled out, balsa and wren-shaped plugs are in there now, and I'm glassing over them. Other than that, I did go down to Orange County for All Grip Paint School, and I'm filming as much as I can, so more will be coming soon. Thanks so much for watching. It really means a lot to me, and we'll see y'all next time.